Question: does the media that we consume reflect or shape the world around us? Let's keep this question in the back of our minds as we discuss why I love Severance. And those very same reasons that make me love it also make me nervous about the prospect of the show's conclusion.
For the uninitiated, Severance is a show on Apple TV+. We primarily follow Mark Stout, or Mark S., along with his coworkers at a mysterious corporation called Lumen, run by the also mysterious Egan family. Mark and his coworkers undergo a medical severing procedure that splits their consciousness into two selves, one who only exists at work, the innie, and one who only exists outside of it, the outie. As work life unfolds for Mark S. as an innie and he grapples with his life and Lumen's shadow as an outie, we slowly discover clues as to the true nature of his mysterious and important work.
There's so much to praise here, from the music, wow, to the compositions, oh my, to this opening sequence created by Oliver Lato, aka Extraweg. I'm just never going to skip this opening sequence, ever. I mean, just from the synopsis alone, Severance has some incredible theming and premises to explore. They are heavily topical, from the more micro-personal explorations of grief and escapism to the more macro questions about quasi-religious corporate culture and late or surveillance capitalism. I think media like Severance, Squid Game, and Parasite owe some of their success to their ability to capture alienation through running metaphor. In 1840, when little-known German philosopher Karl Marx discussed the idea of alienation, he took it further than describing a general sense of disillusionment with work, but a sense of detachment from the wider world, the modern world, human nature, and even oneself.
Quote, "The alienation of the worker in his product means not only that his labor becomes an object and external existence, but that it exists outside him, independently as something alien to him, and that it becomes a power on its own confronting him. It means that the life which he has conferred on the object confronts him as something hostile and alien."
Now, this isn't to say that Severance, the show on Apple TV, is an anti-capitalist work of art, not even a little, but Severance does capture this concept really well through its world that imports much from our world. When we think about the inciting action for Mark Stout to become a severed employee, literally detaching from himself, we see a person who was not able to grieve the loss of his wife and fulfill a personal, intrinsic need, finding escape first in alcohol, resulting in job loss as a professor, before ostensibly feeding two beasts at once, financial need, and relief from pain through severance. Of course, there's what we're told through character actions, exposition, and dialogue in the show, but there's also the bespoke elements of the world that are resonant, that evoke a sense of alienation in the audience. Let's take a look at a specific example: the physical setting for the innies of the show, the severed floor at Lumen HQ, where people cease to be themselves outside of work and become their work selves. The severed floor is a remarkably dutiful depiction of a non-place, and one that is dehumanizing by design. But what is a non-place, and what makes them alienating to us? The term non-place was introduced by very French anthropologist Marc Auger in his 1992 paper, Non-Places, Introduction to an Anthropology of Supermodernity. I know that sounds dense, but stick with me. A place, as he defines it, is rooted in culture, meaning, and personal or communal history. Non-places are a subversion of that, spaces where humans remain anonymous. A non-place exists detached from context, meaning it isn't concerned with identity or significance. They're places that feel heavily administered. The oxymoron disturbingly normal comes to mind. One is guided between points of significance through an array of signs, screens, and forms. Increasingly, these are becoming more abundant, not just in the physical world, airport terminals, corporate hallways, parking lots, abandoned malls in a state of transition from what they were to what they will be one day, but the digital world as well. Dead internet theory posits a world where the internet is not filled with human interaction modulated digitally, but interactions with and between bots. I personally once worked in an office setting that I would describe as a non-place, and it felt eerie. It's a feeling that I get when there's a shot of the hallways of the severed floor, and I don't think I'm alone in that respect. There's an interesting fascination with non-places, especially today. They may be referred to as liminal spaces or backrooms as well. In 2019, an anon on the 4chan paranormal-focused message board X posted a photo of this yellow, eerily lit room with stained carpet, buzzing fluorescent lights, monotonous wallpaper, and millions of rooms to get trapped in. Aesthetically, it's just a room, but it evoked an incredibly strong reaction that clearly had resonance beyond the aesthetic. Additionally, the poster referenced no clipping, a video game reference in which a player clips through a boundary to an area the developers did not intend for exploration, thus apparating ex nihilo into the space devoid of context. Fully 4 years after the post in 2023, people were still posting in the thread with images that are disquieting, that just feel off. The post truly has set off an avalanche of engagement beyond 4chan. Subreddits, plural, now hundreds of thousands strong, spawned games on Steam like Pools that are about exploring liminal spaces billed as psychological horror games were developed. Even a YouTube series about the backrooms that garnered nearly 100 million views was produced. Severance follows in this line, capturing a sense of transition and unease en masse. What is our relationship to our work? Why? Our work selves, and why? How has that changed over the last N years, and how so? There's something particularly malevolent about putting people in a place like this. The transitory space is all the innies will ever know. A disquieting denial of humanity achieved by the setting alone, even without a fully formed understanding of the human antagonist or antagonists. Now, I'm not saying that, every piece of media needs to have this profound social commentary. Michael Eisner, former Disney CEO and Paramount executive, taught me that from his 1981 memo. Quote, "We have no obligation to make history. We have no obligation to make art. We have no obligation to make a statement. To make money is our only obligation." I sort of glossed over one element of the Backrooms engagement avalanche from before, which is that there's a slight branching in the community. If you go to the Backrooms wiki that is admirably fleshed out, you will find some references to entities that patrol the backroom, these Cthulhu or Moloch-type demons. Now, some people in especially liminal spaces communities really don't like this, and I think that's because it breaks the tether to reality and takes away from potential community-driven narrative depth, and I tend to be partial to this way of thinking. I really like that psychological, subtle horror rather than something that embraces the more supernatural, ghoulish, and breaks that tether to reality. And I think Severance benefits from that tether as well. I can see Severance branching off in a few different directions. I'll label these with analogs so they're easier to track. The first is the lost route. Severance gets tangled up in its own maze of narrative and can't disentangle itself, but I'll leave that where it is. I have faith that this won't happen. The Stephen King ending, an unsettling or trippy conclusion. What if the entire thing, the innie and outie experience, is wrapped up in a higher level Severance procedure? I like this one. The Sopranos ending, an ambiguous ending that leaves the interpretation in the hands of the audience, and this would get absolutely dogged on the internet, but I don't know how I would feel at this point towards it. The Tragedy, simply a tragic ending or one that depicts a struggle in vain. Also, not opposed to this, although I would be sad. And lastly, the J.K. Rowling ending. One in which the Egans and Lumen are otherworldly evils that need to be rid of for everything to go back to normal. Nothing really changes except these entities and people are excised from the world. The one that I would just really be disappointed about is that J.K. Rowling ending. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's sufficient. Harry defeats Voldemort and becomes a cop, upholding the order that allowed a figure like Voldemort to give rise in the first place, so there will inevitably be another. Now you may be thinking, Armand, clearly the Egans and Lumen are ghoulishly evil. I mean, Exhibit A, they kidnapped Gemma. And my response to that is, I think it would be phenomenal if what they are doing is perfectly legal, mundane, even respectable in the society. Again, the writers, as with all media, have imported elements from our world into the show. There's a Senate that appears at least somewhat compromised, and elite that view Lumen favorably. There's organizations like the Whole Mind Collective that operate outside of institutional power structures and debate on nightly news about the ethical dilemma of severance, if you can call it a dilemma. Elements that are noticeably far less visible in Season 2. However, in Season 2, we still have the insinuation that there are entire towns that are company towns, that are dependent upon hollowed out by the Enterprise, something that we know from our world. There's also the insinuation that children work for Lumen into their adulthood, something that we did and may again know in our world. And that is so bad. Like, the state of affairs there is such a cluster that rhetorically, I feel it would be disappointing if there wasn't an attempt to address the root causes there. It's not enough to reintegrate a severed worker, but you must address why severance became appealing in the first place. And that may be a real problem to the streaming platform that owns Severance, because heaven forbid that there is a global severed workers uprising, you create a participatory economy or wholesale reorient the economy around a different set of human values. Because ultimately, I believe the answer is both. The media we consume is a mirror and a mold. It reflects the times we live in and will shape how people conceptualize the problems they're in and the solutions. Severance does a great job holding up that mirror and reflecting a familiar yet alienating reality. That's what I love about it. That's also what makes me anxious about its ending.